Hey guys, Simon here with the Caddis Fly Shop and Oregon Fly Fishing Blog, and it is a little bit into February, and there's something coming up next month or maybe late this month that you should be ready for, and that is the March brown hatch. If you're a new angler, it's a huge deal. In the spring here, it's the first big bug that comes off, and the fish go nuts for them. Very often people swing wet flies for them. That's very typical. And so I'm showing you how to tie a March brown wet fly. It's a traditional hare's ear wet. Just kind of sized for a March brown. It's on the new Ahrex legacy hook, the 880 in a size 10. It's a beautiful hook, and we had to tie a soft hackle on it because it's a real old school bronze hook. It's really nice, so it uses just a couple simple materials that most people have, so it's pretty accessible, and we're doing a bead and no bead, so we'll show you how it's done. Going over this a little bit more closely, again, we're using this new legacy line of Ahrex hooks, the 880 legacy wet fly in a size 10. Bumped it from a 12 just because of the geometry of the hook. It made a little more sense. I always like to size up a little bit too when I'm swinging something so the fish notice it. The body, or the tail, is these guard hairs right here from the Hare. Different parts of the mask you can actually pull guard hairs very easily, and I love to use natural materials when I can. And then the body is dubbed out of just raw Hare's mask. I love using this Hareline Zirconia rake to do that. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. The ribbing is Lagartun oval tinsel. It's very fancy. Works perfectly on a elegant wet fly. It's very fitting. I'm using the Smhaen bobbin with 70 Denier Danvilles, and then the Hackle is Partridge. Another thing that makes this pretty helpful is this Smhaen material guard to keep some of the fibers out of the way when you pull the rest of them back. And we are going to be tying one with a bead. So the bead that I'm using is a Hareline Countersunk tungsten bead, 7/64 or 2.8 millimeter in gold. Red would also look nice too. Lastly, we've got Solarez bone dry here and a Loon UV torch to cure it up quick. Looking closely here, we've got just guard hairs from a hare's mask for the tail. Standard hare's ear dubbing right from the mask. We've got Lagartun medium oval tinsel here. Here we've got a, what is that, 7/64? Yeah, 7/64, 2.8 millimeter gold tungsten bead. You can do brass, you can do no bead. I did one of each, and I will show you what it looks like with no bead. You just do need to remember to put a bump of dubbing back there. And then this is Partridge, and most importantly, the hook's the LE880 from Ahrex. I told you guys that, and Danville 70 Denier red. So it's really simple. Most materials people have at home, so it's a pretty accessible fly, and you should have plenty of time to tie them up before March rounds are here. Just real quickly here, tied exactly the same. This is one without a bead. Generally has a little bit slimmer profile because there's not a huge bead bumping it. If you wanted the profile to bump out a little bit more, you just need to put a really big bump of dubbing there. You can even put a dark spot to imitate, you know, some wing pads that are ready to pop. But yeah, sometimes you want something like this, sometimes you want something with a bead. You could do both with this. I'm just showing you guys. Like I said, we're starting with this 70 Denier Danvilles, and one of the first things we have to do is lock the bead where we want it, and you just need to think, I need however much space you need. You need to leave space to do the soft hackle in front, the Partridge. So I like to leave about that much space. You may want more, you may want less. Just make sure you're being mindful about that. And we cross like an X, and that's how you kind of lock that bead into place. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to take that little snip of guard hairs right here. For the tail, what we're going to do is we are going to trim a little bit of this hair right here. You just take a little pinch of these guard hairs and snip it. In different guard hairs, you know, this is much fluffier. This is much more, you just get guard hairs, so pick where you want. I like to pick from right here. Just snip right like that. And we're going to tie it in right on the back. Don't need too much, just a small little clump of it, but this is we're doing a very classic take on this, so we're using the proper materials for it, and so we are going to tie a bunch of this in right here. Tail doesn't need to be too long, but I also wouldn't make it too terribly short. Next, we're going to do some of this Lagartun tinsel in medium. You could also use gold wire. Just we wanted to make it look like an elegant wet fly, so we used some nice stuff. This is size medium in gold. It looks really nice. It kind of has a wider profile because it's a tinsel versus a wire, so you do see a little bit more of that flash compared to other things. And now we're going to take some of this dubbing from that Hare's mask right here. So raking out the dubbing, I like to pull right from the front of the mask, and the harder you rake, the spikier the dubbing gets. So I'm using moderate pressure right now, but if I really want to make things real spiky, you can see there's not too many guard hairs in here, but if I really rip, and I've been pulling from there a lot, but if I really dig, you can see there's a lot more guard hairs right here now. And less is more. You need to start real small towards the back, and we're going to build our taper as we get up to the bead. And I'm going to say it now in case I forget, you need to leave a little bit of space right up behind the bead because you need space to tuck in that Lagartun wire. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to dub this body all the way up. And I like to do little bit by little bit. If you try to put enough dubbing on it the whole way, it'll work, but your body will look all wonky. So I like to work slow and precise rather than just putting a big chunk of it on. And I like to, you can see I'm kind of spreading out the hairs here a little bit. That makes it easier to dub it and get, that way you don't end up with just like one big matted clump. And so what I'm going to do is, you see I have a little space right here. It might be hard to tell, but I can get my nail in there. I've got space. And so what I'm going to do now is we're going to rib this tinsel up. And that way, since we saved a little space right there, we have enough space to lock that tinsel in right there. We're going to snip it, and you can add, if you have space, just a tiny little bit more Hare's mask right up in there. And now that is good. The whole back is done. It's pretty simple. Now we're just going to add the feather, and we'll be good. So picking a feather from here, you have small up by the neck, and you have fairly small ones on the shoulders, and then as you work down the back, they generally get larger. So you kind of want to look at what size of a feather you're going to throw on this thing. To me, something like this looks really great if you're pulling directly from a cape or a skin, just like that. If you're pulling from a bag, find one that's small, or you just use the tips. There's some marabou stuff here, some down feathers that keep the bird warm. We don't want any of that on there. So I'm going to strip all that off, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch the tip right here, and some of these, to me, that's still way too long for this. So I'm actually going to pull some of those off. We don't need a ton. We're going to pull some of these off, just because these real long ones will just make it look real funny. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to pinch the very tip feathers if I can, and I want to get as much of these feathers pulled back as possible. And it should look like this. You're going to want to pull a bunch of the fibers back, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tie it in backwards like this, leaving our little tip going through the back. Some people strip it off. I like to just keep it. It almost adds like an upper wing, so I think it looks okay. And then we're going to tie it back on itself like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to palmer the whole thing back. And if it looks funny, don't worry about it. There's a couple of different ways that we can mitigate some of the stuff that looks kind of funny. So you can tell it's going all over the place here, and that's totally fine. There's a little trick I have that makes it look perfect in about 2 seconds. So what you want to do is you want to trim the stem as close as you can get to it. And then you're going to take all these fibers right here and kind of pull them back. And that's how you can kind of fix that little bit, and it helps build your little bump too. And so what you're going to do now is pull all those back, and that's why I have this Smhaen material guard. This kind of helps me corral the fibers that are already back. It kind of helps me just keep them pulled back, and then I can see like, okay, I have these couple that I need to help back. And so I like to get my thread up real close for this, and then just kind of help it back. And take a couple of wraps and just keep it pushed back. And now we're just going to build a little bump of thread, resin it, and then we are good. This is a little hot spot. A lot of classic wet flies have like a little thread head like this. It's very common. But we're going to build just a little body here, resin it, and then we are all good. This is ready to go swing for some March Browns. And like I said, if you didn't do the If you didn't do the bead, totally fine. Sometimes you don't want the bead, sometimes I don't want the bead. But this one's kind of nice, especially when the water's up a bit. So what we're going to do is a little dot, as always, of Solarez, just to kind of cure this whole thing in. And then you've got a beautiful March brown wet that is ready to fish. Has a stout wire for some of those big fish on the lower Mackenzie, where the March browns go crazy. And you are ready to go. We're going to cure it real quick. We've got all this stuff and more at caddisflyshop.com. You can come get it in the store or order it online at caddisflyshop.com. There's links below in the comments. Thanks.